So the Browns are going to go on the road to Cincinnati here, which is an important game, one to bounce back against what happened against the Steelers, and also because it is another division game, and you've already lost 2 of them, so you can't afford to lose another one if you're the Cleveland Browns and you want to stay alive in this division race. So to get more insight on the Cincinnati Bengals, I brought in somebody special that you all know. Who is that? Well, let's talk about it. Real quick before this video starts, I want to make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. Also, if you want to help me out in some extra ways, I have a PayPal link in the description below where you can send a one-time donation. Or if you're feeling real charitable, you can join my Patreon or follow me on Twitch. All those things are great ways to support me, and I appreciate any gesture that you can show at these times. All right, so you guys know when I'm talking Bengals on this channel, I can't not do it without my guy, Ace Boogie, in the building. Ace, how you doing today, man?
Doing good, man. I'm a little frustrated from the AFC North talk show the other day, but I'm doing all right.
You ain't the only one. You ain't the only one. And I think this is funny, right? Because honestly, I think both teams are in the exact same situation, the exact same spot that they were in week 2. Obviously, the Cleveland Browns took the exact same butt whipping on the road by a top tier division rival, like literally almost the same, like identical score. And then you got with Philly, you know, I mean, not with Philly, but with Cincinnati, you have a similar thing happen where the expectations got real high with Joe Burrow, absolutely reset after that Baltimore game. And then you had some good, and then you had some bad in a really close game against a good defense that people didn't expect you to be that close with. But it feels really unsatisfactory because you didn't win the game and you ended up making too many mistakes to not win the game. And now both teams heading to Cleveland, except for, well, this time you're heading into Cincinnati. So just overall, how do you feel about this game? How do you feel about the Bengals' chances in this week?
I mean, I think that you hit the nail on the head, and this was the same thing that I said on my podcast is it's the exact same situation. Cleveland's going to be coming out playing angry because they were embarrassed last weekend, just like they were against Baltimore, and that's a dangerous situation to be in when you're a team like us. Now, the other thing that has me worried is the fact that, and people have been really mumbling it, we'll find out after the Bengals go through practice how bad the injury is, but it appears that Joe Mixon may not be in this game. You also talk about the fact that William Jackson is in concussion protocol, and you know how those things go. So that puts those 2 guys in jeopardy of missing this game, which does not give me any sense of confidence in wanting us to essentially be a favorite in this game or anything like that. I mean, I think the Vegas line right now favors the Browns. I think it's a +3 for the Bengals. And I just don't have a lot of confidence in this game because the key to winning for the Bengals in the Zach Taylor era has been Joe Mixon. It really has been. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I talked about this as well, but when you talk about that Colts game, at the beginning of the game, when they went up 24-0, not only was it a product of them being able to get the ball to A.J. Green, to T. Higgins, to Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon was having a day. Like I was shocked. I literally look at all kind of stats going into the game, and the Colts defense really was only giving up 2 yards per carry for the most part on all downs, and he was eating them alive at the beginning of that game. So I thought he was on his way to a big day, and as soon as he goes out with the injury, they literally start coming back. Now, obviously, there were defensive lapses, but the offense just was not the same. And they tried to throw Giovanni Bernard in there. Gio's one of my favorite guys, but he's not Joe Mixon. And that was evident. It was pretty much like the run game was washed away. And I think that it proves that this team has to rely on Joe Mixon to kind of be the engine of this offense to get things going. And without having that, we've really struggled to have an identity. And I think Joe Burrow himself said this yesterday. That was a weird game for him because, you know, he threw so many times, especially with him being a young guy. It was just really a weird game, and you guys hopped out on us, and we had no answer for it outside of throwing. So I think going into this game, I'm not confident that the Bengals are going to come out of this as the victor.
Yeah, you mentioned something interesting there with Joe Mixon, is that I've made the case, and I know I've been on one side of the fence with Joe Mixon saying he's not an elite running back. But I think he's kind of made that case for himself this season. And I think it shows when he's not out there, because I think Joe Mixon is one of those rare cases of a elite running back who has a terrible offensive line. And it absolutely shows. I mean, anytime you've given that offensive line something that they can just be mediocre against, like Jacksonville or like San Diego against the run not San Diego, the Chargers against the run, he's been able to eat. Once he's not out there, though, it ain't nobody else can eat, because it's not the offensive line making holes available for him. It's just Joe Mixon. If you don't let him get tackled 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, he can actually be very dangerous. But that's not been happening more times than it's not. Also, something that has not been happening as much as we anticipated was Joe Burrow. You know, he had the really hot start. It looked like he was a rising star. He had the setback against Baltimore, but that was kind of expected. And then he had an up and down day against Indy. I mean, that first half was pretty good, but in the second half, he ultimately throws the interception on a drive that could have been a game winner for him. Where do you think his development has been at, and has the inability to run the ball, do you think that's going to have long-term effects on his development?
I think it will. Like, I think for right now, Joe's in a situation where he started off the season pretty hot, and then he had the Baltimore game, right? That was the first time that he had seen the blitz like Baltimore did. And one thing that kind of helped him rebound in the Colts game is that he was able to also face a team that was not really throwing the blitz at him. But one thing that people kind of forget in that Colts game, before he threw that interception and when the game was on the line, the Colts, a team that is, I think, 31st right now in the league at blitzing, started blitzing on every down. And that was concerning to me. I think one thing that he has to figure out is the blitz, whether that's a mix of being able to establish that run early so that they can just not defenses cannot exclusively play the pass, I think is very important. You have to get Joe Mixon involved. The offensive line is what it is. Like, it's honestly frustrating at this point. You would think that they would try to make some moves and go out there and be active in terms of finding a viable solution with this offensive line, but it really is what it is. And honestly, I think that he's just not in the best position from an offensive line standpoint, from the lack of a running game standpoint. At times, play calling standpoint, like, we're not even going to get into the fullback Samaje Perine dive last week. That was just random. But he hasn't been put in a scenario to have a lot of success, right? I still think that Joe Burrow is a very good rookie quarterback, but I feel like what they're trying to do is take all of their deficiencies, whether it's coaching, whether it's offensive line, whether it's lack of a run game, lack of a run scheme. This was something that they struggled with last season again, and it's happening again. A lack of an identity. That's another thing. Like, I think Zach Taylor, with him being a former quarterback, sometimes he gets wrapped up in wanting to pass all of the time. Like, he literally wants to pass all of the time. And so from that standpoint, I think it's definitely factors that could hurt Joe Burrow's growth. I don't think that it could permanently hurt it. Like, if they were able to move away from this coaching staff and get him the right coach there, which we'll talk about later, I think that that will definitely help him. But they are not doing him any favors. And I think that they are damaging him, because the more hits that he takes, the more blitz looks that he gets without having a proper coaching staff that can adjust to those. And I've talked to former players, and they've said that, like offensive linemen, they've said that in that Ravens game, the Ravens didn't throw like any exotic blitzes at him. It wasn't anything crazy, but he said that the offensive line and the coaching did not give him a chance to actually survive that blitz. So I think in a nutshell, yes, it can affect him. How much it will affect him, we'll have to see, but it's definitely affecting him this season.
Now, speaking of Joe Burrow and where he's had success, I think one of the things he was really good at in Cleveland in week 2, and partly I think this was due to Cleveland's lack of personnel on the inside, was be able to kind of hit those kind of short routes, to be able to kind of avoid getting tackled for loss. You know, he got hit a lot, but he avoided a lot of sacks that second week in Cleveland. But now the Browns have Kevin Johnson back, who has proven to be a much better interior threat than Tavier Thomas. And then also Malcolm Smith has proven to be really good in that interior area. I think this is a Browns team that's going to be playing a lot better in that area, a lot more well-equipped to guard a guy like T. Higgins, who's going to line up mostly in the slot. Not T. Higgins, I'm sorry, Tyler Boyd, Boyd, who's going to line up mostly in the slot. Do you think, one, that same area of the field's going to be there? And do you think Joe Burrow's going to be able to have similar success that he had in week 2 against his Cleveland defense?
Yeah, I think week 2, it was a couple of things like you hit on. Like the Browns, obviously we do the AFC North talk. So we all knew that the Browns were decimated in the secondary. They were still trying to get chemistry and stuff together. And like you said, they're getting healthier. They're getting guys that are playing more consistent, better back there. I think at the time, Tyler Boyd was literally Joe Burrow's lifeline. At that point, T. Higgins wasn't really involved that much. I think that may have been the first game that he was in. He wasn't featured much early in the season. There was a lot of Mike Thomas that you probably saw from that game. There was a lot of other guys that were there that were taking those T. Higgins snaps. T. Higgins, I think, has emerged as a guy that definitely has a connection with Joe. Like at first when we talked about it, it was Tyler Boyd. I think T. Higgins, that chemistry is there. We've seen it a couple of weeks. We saw it last week for the first time, going away from just a short middle in that area. They actually finally went deep. They have been horrible this season going deep. Like whether it's to John Ross, whether to whoever it is, they've been horrible there. Tyler Boyd is a guy that's going to get his opportunities, but other things that they've been doing is moving guys around throughout that offense. So putting A.J. Green in the slot, putting T. Higgins in the slot, and trying to move them around. Like you said, though, Tyler Boyd's going to get the majority of those targets there. Maybe they have some success there, but we'll have to see. I think now you're going to see him spread it out more than just solely focusing on Tyler Boyd. Obviously, A.J. Green had the game that he had last week, so now they're finally getting on the same page. And I think that that's really what all of that was about. But now he's got 3 consistent receivers that he has some rapport with. The troubling thing, though, is you're probably not going to have to worry about Drew Sample at all. Like whether it's over the middle or wherever it's at, you're not going to have to worry about him at all because I don't even know if we have tight ends anymore. After CJ Uzomah went down, it's pretty much our tight end position has died. So I think that you'll see him spread it around. And I think that he may take 1 or 2 deep shots. I don't think that it's going to be like bombs away or anything like that. But you will see them try to go away. And one thing that they did in that game that made no sense to me was that they kept targeting Denzel Ward when you guys had injuries at other places. And I'm like, why are you targeting one of the best corners in the league? I think Joe probably learned his lesson from that and will try to spread that ball around.
Yeah, so another issue for Cincinnati in that week 2 matchup was their ability or inability to be able to stop this run. Now, I know you guys had injuries. DJ Reader didn't play. Geno Atkins didn't play. I know DJ Reader is now out for the season. Are you guys confident in your ability to stop the run better than you did in week 2?
Better than week 2, yes, because week 2 was a complete disaster. I mean, guys were just missing tackles left and right. I mean, this Cleveland, you have to give them credit. I actually just did a film review on this yesterday. You have to give them credit. Those offensive linemen were nasty. They were, really disruptive there. I think that they'll be better. I don't think that they'll shut it down. I think that they'll definitely be a lot better because they had to learn with guys that they weren't familiar with at the time, like a Christian Covington. A Mike Daniels possibly comes back. But I think that they've done way better than I expected after that game. It seems like that game was a wake-up call for them. Because the following games after that, whether it was Jacksonville, whether it was Indy, whether it's the Ravens, like they've been pretty decent against the run. I think that they learned a lot of lessons there from that Browns offense. Will they shut down the run? I can't guarantee that, but I don't think that it'll just be as bad as it was in that game.
So I guess it boils down to this. This is the last question and kind of preview portion of this interview is, in your mind, if you're coaching the Bengals, how did Cincinnati beat this Cleveland team? What do they have to do?
I think the first thing that you have to do is get some consistency and run a balanced offense. Now, obviously, if Joe Mixon isn't there, that's going to be hard to do, but you have to do that. You also have to use creative plays to get players open in space and go away from Denzel Ward. If he's on AJ the whole game, don't make that your game plan to go at Denzel Ward. Attack some of the other deficiencies within the Cleveland defense if you feel like they have some. The other thing is to make sure when you're on defense that you have to be able to make sure that you are aware that Odell Beckham Jr. is on the field, Jarvis Landry is on the field. You definitely have to concentrate on trying to at least neutralize that run. and try to see what you're going to get from a offensive perspective from the Browns. Now, I don't know, and you may know better. Is Baker Mayfield playing in this game, or is it going to be Case Keenum? Do you know?
Oh no, he's gonna play. Yeah, all signs are pointing towards that.
You've got to force Baker into some turnovers because there's no way that this Bengals offense is going to be able to consistently score. And if you do get those turnovers, which you did against Phillip Rivers, you have to score points. They did not score a point off of that Phillip Rivers turnover, and you have to capitalize on those. But if you don't make if you don't capitalize on those efforts, then you're definitely looking at a long day. But if you are to try to beat the Browns, you got to neutralize the run, which we saw that Pittsburgh did. You got to get up on them, and you've got to force Baker Mayfield to become a passer instead of being able to rely on the Dalton diet where you've got a great running attack. You're keeping the ball out of the defender's hands, and that's what you got to do.
Yeah, definitely, man. So that's going to be the end of part 1 of this interview. Make sure you're subscribed and notified here so you can catch part 2. Also, make sure you subscribe to New Stripe City, a dope channel there, especially if you're a Bengals fan. Also, if you like Bengals content or if you just like football content in general, check out Orange is the New Black on Spotify. Also, AFC North Talk. Subscribe to that. Again, I know I'm giving you guys a lot of links. It's all going to be in the description. Check it out there. Make sure you're locked in and be back here for part 2. All right, so we're back here for part 2 of this interview. I said in the intro, we're going to talk about some of the things about the Bengals where there's more than meets the eye. Hey, so you excited to talk about that one today?